Hi everyone, I'm Alex Wong, the creator of the Story of Community, and welcome to the Epilogue. Every Wednesday for the next 4 weeks, I'll be chatting with some of my fellow community podcasters about their experience as longtime community fans, which I, as someone who first watched the show in 2019, am not. So here with me once again are Adam from Apartment 303 and Matt from Communities. So today we're talking about episode 4, 2012, where I tell the story of the departures of Dan Harmon and Chevy Chase and the second benching. So the first question I wanted to ask was, did you think Community would be different without Dan Harmon?
I was pretty sure it would be different. I didn't know exactly how. And I knew that they were going to retain as many of the personnel as possible. And, when you think about the cast itself, everyone is such a brilliant performer that, it's like, gosh, I have to imagine it's still going to be a really good show. There's nothing, Donald Glover can read from the phone book and I would laugh. He would find a way to make that funny. So these terrific performers, I knew it was still going to be a good show. I didn't know how different it was going to be, but yeah, of course, I assume some things were going to change, but they kept on Megan Gans and they kept on as many writers as they could. So, I was certainly hopeful, definitely hopeful that I would continue to be a good show, even if it wasn't, an exact carbon copy of what they had done the first couple seasons. And, that could be a good thing too. Sometimes it's good for art to have the space to grow a little bit and to go different directions. And certainly Community has benefited from that by not just locking into one form. That's where we get some of the best of Community. So I had my fingers crossed that this was just going to be another challenge that they could meet and overcome.
Yeah, at the time, losing Dan was important, but the fandom knew Dan from Twitter, but we didn't know how much Dan meant to the voice of the show. Showrunner as a concept of somebody being important to a TV show was kind of new to the public sphere. I mean, they existed, but they weren't public people for the most part. That was not really a thing before that. And
Yeah,
so
people weren't talking about Chuck Lorre
who
in
who
respect
who the
to no,
world talks
absolutely
about
not.
showrunners?
Yeah.
They were meaningless characters and all these things. And Megan stays. Megan's has written some excellent, great episodes. She's got no duds at all in her season 2 and season 3. Andy has written Mixology. Andy's written the Chicken Bus episode. Andy's written great
Andy
episodes.
Bobrow.
Andy Bobrow, excuse me. Great guy. We don't know who the new showrunners are, but they're saying the right things to start with, and the cast is or their best acting is their defense of season 4 before the season started. Because they have all kind of said that they weren't happy with season 4. And look, when Dan leaves, it's not just Dan. Chris McKenna leaves. You have Starburns, Demonopolis,
Yep.
he leaves. You have people who've been there at the very beginning who understands. Look, if they could have held on to McKenna, you've got a shot. But McKenna was loyal to Dan for good reason for their relationship, and he was gone. So the people most involved with that process of how the episode is shaped, it's Dan and Chris, really. Those two people are gone. You have new showrunners, and Megan and Andy go to lunch when they're asked to. They're going to get. By the way, they're going to get bumped up in position. You'll notice that they've got different titles in season 4. They're going to get a bump up in position, and they go and they say to each other, they're going to hate whatever happens, but we want to stay because this is the fandom. I mean, Megan's going to leave anyway. So now there's a reason to stay because it literally it's for us. So they do try to rescue what happens. They do their best. And there's some good episodes in season 4, but we never really understood, I think, as a group, what it meant to lose Dan. And what we lost was that ability to use irony to its fullest extent. And we definitely lost the idea that something different was happening.
You kind of already touched on it, but what did you think of Port and Gracia when they, before the season started?
They said the right things. I mean, they talked about trying to protect the show, and what we knew was that we knew from Dan that the executives were not people that were super helpful in the show. If you listen to the commentaries, which all of us at the time were buying the DVDs as soon as they were available. I don't have the Blu-ray. I don't have the box set. I've got the individual seasons the
Yep.
month they were available. If you listen to them, Dan's telling you, NBC told them that some of their best scripts should have been thrown in the trash. So we knew that the executives involved were a problem. And most important, getting involved, they were saying the right things. But Neil Goldman's gone too. Garrett, I can't remember Garrett's last name. They're gone. Donovan, yeah, they're gone. So we didn't understand how much that meant to the show. And there's a ton of the stuff that's just perfect and right, but the tone is off.
I think the Russo brothers left too.
Russos are, yeah. Well, the Russo brothers are gone after season 2 for the most part. They start fading out. They're less in episodes, if I remember correctly. It's been a while since I looked at details, but they're busy. And they got Civil War coming up. They have Winter Soldier and Civil War. They're really busy.
They did make some unremarkable Marvel movies.
Some flavorless, unremarkable. Yeah. They're gone to some degree, but you still have Tristram.
Yep.
I mean, you still have some of the best writers. You still have some of the best directors. You still have really good people involved. You got the 13. I mean, the DNA to do it right's there. It just wasn't working.
Yeah, I liked how much they made it apparent that they were fans of the show. That was important to me, In addition, that's one of the, when you say they were saying all the right things. That for me, if I had to pick one statement, just they continually underscored how much they loved the show, and it made me feel like that was the best we could do. In lieu of having Dan, I at least want someone who loves it as much as I do.
Yeah. Wow. Pivoting to the second part of our little show here. The other thing that was talked about a good amount in this episode was Dan Harmon and Chevy Chase and the deterioration of their relationship. So how did you view that? Did you take a side? Were you kind of just, wow, this is a mess? What were your feelings around that?
I remember at the time I was Team Dan, and that was pretty clearly demarcated, just in my day-to-day life. And boy, looking back on it now and seeing exactly how everything unfolded, it's not like, for me, it was like, oh, I'm 100% Team Dan. Like, there's no, how could you think any other way? But hearing some of the backstory and all of that, it's like, I can at least see and appreciate some of Chevy's frustrations. I'm not going to say that either one of them was, completely right in what they did, how they acted. But with the pedigree that Chevy has, it's not like he's going to change this late in the game. That's not going to happen. And, he doesn't want to be on set all hours of day. He's got a family that he can be harassing instead of other castmates, So over the years, I've softened, but definitely at the time, I was 100% Team Dan. No question about it.
Is neither an option on that debate? I mean, really, look, Dan plays Chevy's voicemail. Huge no.
Absolutely.
In April of that year. He's fired in May. He's fired less than 2 months later. Dan's drinking on the job regularly. There are alcohol bottles on the writer's table all the time. He is in a emotionally abusive relationship with literally everybody that's there to some degree, particularly in the writer's room, but particularly with Megan and others. Dan is an incredibly difficult person when this is going on, and Chevy is having to work these hours. He is he's a guy who's been an A-level star, at least in the past, particularly in the 80s. Nobody like Chevy. Racist. a good bit of this time. He's saying he's telling Donald that he's only considered funny because he's black. He says that to Donald Glover. The reason people are laughing is because you're black. There's no being on Dan's side for his behavior or Chevy's side for his behavior. Chevy was mean and difficult in a show where he probably should have left after season 2 because it was a really hard job and Dan really wasn't going to change. And he wasn't, as a showrunner, he stressed everybody. They waited till the last minute to do a lot of stuff, but it made some great television. But the problem was it was really hard for people to survive and have a life. Nobody with kids stayed on the staff too long. Emily was gone. Andy's probably the one that lasted the longest with kids. So there was a really quality of life issue with working with Dan. There was a greatness about him. I don't know anybody who sees the world he does and the way he's incredibly funny. And it sounds like some of the toughest places to work that I could imagine. And so I agree with Adam to some degree. I have softened a bit on Chevy, but Chevy was difficult the entire time.
In some ways, you make a point there, Matt, that it was challenging, it was tough, it made good television. It kind of reminds me, in a very loose sense of Fleetwood Mac's album Rumors. Just all of the drama and everything that was going on behind the scenes inspired this terrific album. But boy, you wouldn't wish that on your worst enemy, the circumstances that were going on there.
Yeah, and I like what Dan says later in season 5 about talking to Vince Gilligan. It's like Vince Gilligan's this great human being all the time. He's like, and he makes great content. And he goes, he makes me feel like a fraud because I thought that I had to be this horrible thing to make it. And he's like, Gilligan's over here just being this great human being and making exceptional television. Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul. He's like, he calls himself out on it. God love Dan Harmon for that. He's always owned it. So I do appreciate that.
Yeah, that self-awareness definitely comes off in the show as well.
Yeah.
You're going to watch some of that show in not too long. But that's going to do it for this episode of the Epilogue. Thank you to Adam and Matt. As always, you can find links to Adam's podcast and the community's Twitter account at bit.ly/thestoryofcommunity. Thank you to you all for listening to the podcast, and I'll be back next week with our odd-numbered panel to talk about episode 5, 2013. So I hope you enjoy it, and I'll see you then.